In today's video, we will be taking a look at my updated 2024 Senate election predictions. Now, first off, a overview. Democrats currently hold a 51 of 49 seat advantage in the United States Senate, with 3 independents caucusing with the Democrats. Those 3 independents are Kristen Sinema of Arizona, Angus King of Maine, and Bernie Sanders of Vermont. All 3 of them are up for re-election in 2024. Now, the Senate is incredibly important as, first of all, it's a very competitive race. Democrats, although have a 51 of 49 advantage, this map is very unfavorable for the Democratic Party, so it's very likely that they could end up losing control of the Senate in 2024. Not only that, the Senate is one of the 3 branches of the control of the United States, which means that the party has to control all 3 of these chambers in order to get any legislation done. And now let's get right into today's map. So right now, as you can see, 9 Democratic seats, 2 independent seats, so technically 11 Democratic seats and 8 Republican seats are currently filled in. Now, there's only 2 more Republican seats that haven't filled in yet, which are Texas and Florida, currently held by Republican incumbents. All the other toss-up and blue seats are currently held by Democratic candidates. So as you can see, based on how many of these seats are competitive that Democrats currently hold, really it's going to be a very tough ride for the Democratic Party. Now, because Democrats have to get so many seats in order to have a possibility of retaining control, I'm going to start off by characterizing the likely blue states. First of all is the state of Virginia. Virginia, Tim Kaine is the Democratic incumbent. He won by easy 16-point margin against the Republican, and I think he'll win by around a 14-point margin in 2024. Now, the next state is the state of New Jersey. Bob Menendez won by 11 in the last election. His popularity isn't as great. He was only expected to win by about 4 to 5 points by some political pundits. He did overperform expectations, but still underperform what Democrats typically do in this solidly blue state. And I think he'll still underperform a little bit, but this is a presidential year, so it should help that Joe Biden is also on the ballot, that Biden could end up helping carry the state by a larger margin. Finally, New Mexico, we have the Democrats winning by a very large margin back in 2018, but that was because Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, took away 15% of the vote from the race. That likely would have mostly, if not all, went for the Republican candidate in that race. So I think this race will be around a 10-point race for the Democratic Party. Not a 25-point race like it was last time. Now finally, I believe the final likely blue state is Minnesota. Amy Klobuchar, a very popular Democrat in her home state, she's probably going to easily win re-election by at least 10 points, if not close to 15 points. So that finishes off for the likely blue states. Now let's go to some of the other states that are considered toss-up. Now I'm going to get the 2 states where Republican incumbents are currently out of the way here, both the states of Texas and Florida. First off, in the state of Florida, Rick Scott should be able to win re-election. He is not necessarily as popular as someone like Ron DeSantis, but he is popular enough to definitely win re-election, especially given what we saw in 2020, Democrats severely underperforming in the state of Florida. Furthermore, this is a presidential election year. DeSantis could even be a presidential candidate, so this would really help Rick Scott win re-election in his home state. As well as that Texas, again, the presidential race is widely expected to go red by around a likely margin, so that should help Ted Cruz end up winning. And also, Beto O'Rourke had pretty much changed his views on issues like guns, and Texans are very pro-guns, but Beto O'Rourke has moved to his political rhetoric. He's now more anti-gun, which is probably not going to help him in the deep red state and deeply pro-gun state of Texas. Now for the final states, these toss-up states are all currently held by Democratic incumbents, and some of them are definitely going to fall. States like West Virginia, Montana, and Ohio are considered pretty red states, especially West Virginia and Montana, and Democrats need to win at least one of those 2 races to have some hope in winning the Senate chamber. Now, I'm going to start off with states that are more Democratic favorable because, again, Democrats have a very tough road ahead in 2024. First off, the state of Michigan. Democrats have a pretty good chance in the state of Michigan. If they don't win the state, it's definitely game over. Debbie Stabenow should be able to win re-election. She won by a margin of 6.5 points, though that was not as good as her Democratic counterparts in the state of Wisconsin and the state of Pennsylvania, where Bob Casey and Tammy Baldwin won by significant margins. This was still an impressive win, and at the end of the day, Democrats should be able to hold on to the state of Michigan. As well as that, Democrats should be easily able to win the state of Pennsylvania. As last time we saw Bob Casey, the Democrat, won by 13 points in this deeply competitive state. And finally, I think Democrats also have a pretty good chance in the state of Wisconsin. Again, Tammy Baldwin did win by close to 11 points. Now, he is not gonna win by nearly as large of a margin. Nonetheless, he should still be able to win the state of Wisconsin. And now the final states. These are states that are tougher for the Democratic Party. First off, the state of West Virginia. Now, Joe Manchin's kind of running as this neoliberal, neoconservative type of candidate. He is running as a more moderate candidate. Nonetheless, when Republicans go to the polls and choose between a moderate candidate, a moderate Democrat, and a Republican, they're definitely going to end up choosing the Republican, and that is the problem for Joe Manchin. It's going to be very hard for Manchin to appeal to those Republicans and win their votes, especially win enough of them, considering Biden only got 28% of the vote in the state back in 2020. So Manchin really needs about a third of the GOP ballots in order to win re-election, and that's going to be really, really difficult. So at the end of the day, I think Republicans have a very good chance of flipping the state. Now for the state of Ohio. Now Sherrod Brown is not necessarily as vulnerable as someone like Joe Manchin or Jon Tester, but he is still in a very tough spot. He is in a state that's trending Republican increasingly as Trump won the state by 8 points in both 2016 and 2020. This was previously a bellwether state on the presidential level. It predicted the correct winner of the presidential election for 60 years until in 2020 where it broke its record as the bellwether state. So now I think this state, again, it's still going to be relatively close considering Sherrod Brown is a relatively light candidate. But at the end of the day, I think the GOP has a pretty good shot at flipping the state. Now for Montana, I already spoiled the fact that I believe Jon Tester is more vulnerable than Sherrod Brown, so it shouldn't be much of a surprise that I think Jon Tester's also going to lose. Unlike candidates like Joe Manchin and Sherrod Brown, who had pretty easy first-term victories, Jon Tester, who has already been elected for several terms, had a fight for his life. Even the first term he came in, he won by around 3 points. The second election he held, he still won by around a similar margin, as well as his third election. So that it's his fourth. And will he be able to hold on to his 3.3% lead over Republicans? Well, I don't think so, because again, politics right now is much more divisive, especially in the United States and across the world as well. So it's going to be very hard for him to actually win in this deep red state, especially considering all Republicans really need is around 20 to 30% of Republicans who actually supported Jon Tester, and I think the Republicans will get more than what they actually need. Now for the final two states. Let's start with Arizona, which is very, very interesting. This is a state that, again, there's a Democrat, there's a Republican, and there's the independent Kristen Sinema, who is currently polling in third place, and I do expect her to be in third place. So, as the incumbent, she's not going to even be in the top two spots, which is pretty much never seen in any races at all in the United States, or really anywhere in the world. Except if you count the Chicago mayoral elections. Nonetheless, I think this is a state that's going to be really interesting because the incumbent Kristen Sinema is definitely not going to win enough voters. So the question is, do the Democrats win or do the Republicans win? Now, first off, which voters are necessarily Kristen Sinema splitting to? Now, according to polling, she's getting voters from both sides, but at the end of the day, she was previously a Democratic senator, and that's going to help her end up splitting more of the Democratic vote than the Republican vote, especially considering again, there are a lot of moderate voters in the state of Arizona, but those moderate voters that are going to support Kristen Sinema are likely voters that are Republicans but ended up voting for Joe Biden. Thus, I do think that this is a state that's going to go for the Republicans because more voters that voted for Biden are going to end up voting for Sinema than voters that voted for Trump. Now, finally, for the state of Nevada, this is also very, very close. But at the end of the day, the Democrat only won by around 4 points last time. Now, I do understand that the Democrats at last time actually, by many people's standards, were expected to lose the race because there was a Republican incumbent. Nonetheless, 4 points isn't the largest margin, and Nevada is probably trending a little bit towards the Republicans, given that Biden actually underperformed Hillary Clinton in the state, despite the national environment trending more than 2 points more towards the Democratic Party. So for that reason, I'm gonna give it to the GOP. Now, if you look at this map here, although Democrats do have a combined total of 18 seats against Republicans 15, Democrats actually have lost 5 seats in this map: the states of West Virginia, Ohio, Montana, Nevada, and Arizona. Now, states like Nevada and Arizona are definitely very much in play for the Democratic Party. I would not be surprised at all if they win both of those states. Nonetheless, it becomes difficult for Democrats to hold on to the Senate elections when we go to the other states, such as West Virginia, Ohio, and Montana. Democrats really need to hold all 3 states to win the Senate majority outright with a 51-49 majority. But if Democrats hold on to 2 seats, then it really depends on who wins the presidential election, because then the Senate will be 50-50. Nonetheless, this does not look very good for the Democratic Party. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.